Good evening. I'm Reverend Cynthia Dobson McBride, the Senior Minister of First Christian Church in downtown Portland, Oregon. It's Wednesday evening, March 25th, 2020, and I'm sharing a reflection nearly every night with members of my congregation, while all of us are isolated in our own homes, trying to flatten the curve, slow the spread of the coronavirus, COVID-19. Tonight, Wednesday evening, happens to be the fifth Wednesday of Lent, in essence, the beginning of the fifth week of Lent. For those of you who aren't very familiar with the Christian tradition of the Lenten season, let me just explain that it's a period of 40 days, a time of reflection and repentance, a time to intentionally focus on one's spiritual walk with the divine. The 40 days are counted from Ash Wednesday up until Easter Sunday, not counting the Sundays during the season of Lent, because each Sunday is kind of like a mini Easter, a time of resurrection in the midst of reflection on sin and death and mortality. This Lenten season of 2020 seems much more poignant than most, as our world lives through the coronavirus. The reality of death, of human mortality, is nearer to many of us than we're often aware of. This evening, I was part of an online Lenten Vespers service. The downtown congregations in Portland had planned on sharing a weekly service during Lent. Each of our churches held our own Ash Wednesday service, and then the next Wednesday, the second Wednesday of Lent, we gathered together at First Baptist Church. And Chris Shade, their associate minister, and their new senior minister, Matt, led a service that included preaching and singing. We were gathered together in the chapel at First Baptist. By the next week, 1 week later, the coronavirus was beginning to spread in Oregon. It's beginning to impact Washington and Multnomah counties. And there was talk of limiting gatherings of people in public spaces. Those numbers kept reducing how many people should gather together. That third Wednesday of Lent, the second combined service, was held at First Presbyterian Church. The next week, last Wednesday, would have been my congregation's turn to host, First Christian. That was in the middle of probably the most intense week for our community, coming to terms with the seriousness of COVID-19 and its immediate impact. That was the week when schools closed and restaurants closed and churches stopped holding services in their sanctuary. Now here we are a week later. And life continues, but it feels very different. And Lent continues for Christians, perhaps with more spiritual reflection than in an average year. This evening, the scheduled service was supposed to be held at First Congregational Church, a UCC, United Church of Christ congregation, just up the street from the church I serve on South Park Avenue, Portland. Well, their pastor, Janet Parker, and her staff arranged to do a worship service by Zoom, and they invited me to participate. Several members of my congregation, Chris Shade from the Baptist Church, and of course Pastor Janet from First Congregational, all of us were together on the screen, as well as not just local Christians, but folks who were watching from farther away. A friend of mine from Virginia shared with us this evening. During that service, one of the readings that Janet asked me to do is Psalm 42. Psalm 42 begins, "As the deer longs for flowing waters, so my soul thirsts after God." A deer in the woods seeks water to drink. In fact, every living creature seeks water, source of life, precious. Water keeps us alive. And during a pandemic, we're also aware that it can help us keep us clean. We use it to wash our hands, to clean our homes, shower and bathe. Portland is a really unique place. Downtown Portland has these historic water fountains. They're almost like a work of art, a sculpture. It's beautiful fountains. They're called Benson Bubblers, and they provide free drinking water downtown. A few of them even have little spigots for dogs to come and drink. This week, the city turned off the Benson Bubblers. I haven't heard officially, but I'm presuming just because, again, they're worried about the spread of coronavirus, and there's not somebody on staff to go around and bleach them every time someone's there. So the free drinking water is gone. Now, that doesn't impact most people. A lot of folks in Portland are following the governor's stay home order. We're in our own homes. We have running water in our kitchen sink. But my friends who sleep outside, who are unhoused, the houseless in our community, they're really feeling the impact of those water fountains being turned off. Imagine if you sleep in a tent right by a major interstate in a metropolitan area. The cost of housing is just too much for you to afford, or maybe you have mental illness, or there are 1,000 different stories for 1,000 different houseless people why they are where they are. Here in Portland, there are folks who've slept outside for quite a while. Right now they're hurting. So some of my friends who sleep outside, they rely on those Benson Bubblers to get a drink of water and to fill a water bottle. Now, some of them, they used to go to the public library, a safe place to hang out and fill your water bottle in the bathroom, or they'd go to Starbucks or maybe McDonald's. Pay $1 at McDonald's, you get a glass of iced tea, you can sit inside for a little while, fill up your water bottle in the bathroom. Well, all of our sit-down restaurants are closed. It's only to-go orders. So I know tonight some of my neighbors are really thirsty, and they're really stressed. When the governor says stay at home, what do you do if you don't have a physical home? Or if your house is a tent or a sleeping bag on a sidewalk? I'm thinking about a colleague of mine who works more closely with his street friends even than I do, and he knows them and they trust him. Psalm 42 holds for us the promise that God will be there when we are thirsting, when we are longing, when we are hurting and aching and confused. And all of those things are so true in our world right now. I've been thinking about flowing water, and I decided to mention Psalm 42 tonight, but there's something else on my mind. So I'm just going to let you put this together for yourself and figure out what it means to you, because I'm still pondering what it means to me. A little introduction first. This glass, I'm holding this picture. My husband and I bought in Venice. We were so blessed to travel to Europe a few years ago, and we went to Italy for the very first time, and it was beautiful. My husband was longing to see Venice. We enjoyed Rome, and I loved the architecture in Florence, and Venice was intriguing. Oh my goodness. while we were there, we went to the island of Murano and watched a glass blower. And we brought home glass. A few glasses and a small pitcher, nothing extravagant really, but it reminds us of that trip. Lately, I've been drinking water out of this Murano glass a lot. And when I do, I think about people who live in Venice. Maybe even the family that ran the glass factory we visited. And I'm thinking about how hard the coronavirus has hit there in that country and how much they're struggling. So here's the little piece of history or learning that I offer you to share in your own reflection and piece together. The word quarantine, to isolate people within a community when there's an illness that's spreading rapidly. The word quarantine actually comes from the 1300s in the city of Venice. Illness was spreading, and it was traveling by ship. Venice was the heart of seafaring merchant trade, and so when a new ship would arrive, instead of letting it right into the harbor, right into the canals of the city, the ship would have to stay out in the lagoon, and they'd fly a flag so that people ashore knew that was a quarantined ship. They were just waiting to make sure that there was no illness on board, that no one on board had any symptoms, that there wasn't anything those travelers, those sea merchants would bring in that would hurt the population. So the word of quarantine itself is tied to 40 days. 40 days. 40 days was how long those ships had to wait to make sure everybody on board was healthy, and then they'd signed and all clear and they could come in. 40 days. We're in the midst of the season of Lent. 40 days. I'm not trying to make some profound theological connection here. I've just been pondering the season of Lent and the word quarantine and how those happen to coincide right now. This evening, when you're coming and going, like my dog Brett, pause for a little while. Think about people who are quarantined and people who are isolated, and communities that are counting time when people are sick, whether they're counting 14 days to see if they'll develop symptoms, or they're counting so many numbers of weeks to find out when schools might or might not open again. 40 days can feel like a really, really long time. You might even find yourself being impatient, anxious, like a pup that's not ready to settle for the night. 40 days. You might find yourself longing for it to be over. This morning, my funny husband, we really haven't been isolated that long yet, but my husband said, "Hey, Cindy, let's go to Elmer's for breakfast," a local restaurant. And of course we can't. Restaurant's closed. I'm staying in the house, not going out. It's funny, I wasn't missing it until he said something. And then I remembered how good the pancakes are and how much he liked seeing his friends who work there. It got me to start longing a little bit for something that I couldn't have. What are you longing for? What are you thirsting for? What are you hoping for? I know all of us are longing for an end to the coronavirus, to an end of the COVID-19 pandemic, not just for ourselves or our loved ones, but for the whole world, for the people of Venice, for the people of China. if you happen to be watching this from someplace where things are worse than they are in Oregon, please know I'm praying for you. And if you happen to be watching from a place where things don't seem that bad and you think people are really overreacting, that it's crazy communities are shutting down stuff, I hate to say it, but your turn's coming. So pray for us. If your life is grand and easy and there's nothing you're longing for, enjoy that. And if there are things you're longing for, you might take time to read Psalm 42. Reflect on how the psalmist knew what it is like to long for God in your life, in your Lenten journey, or in your quarantine, in your 40 days or your 14 days, whatever period of waiting you're in. May the longing you feel bring you closer to those you love and to God who loves you. Have a good night, friends. Rest well. And maybe get a drink of water before you go to bed and say thanks for it.